Hey guys, Thaden here again. Today we're going to be going over some of the Paladin class changes. I'm going to be trying to do videos for each of the classes, but since I roll Paladin as my main, I'm going to kind of go over what I've found out so far. In case you haven't really been paying attention to the changes that are coming to all of the classes in MoP, basically they're really kind of changing around the way that talents work according to spec versus class. The main reasoning behind that being that they don't really want certain abilities to be used by certain specs, and conversely, they don't really want to limit certain abilities just because you're not in a certain spec. So now there is kind of this ability to kind of have all your core abilities just by being a paladin. So if you go ahead and, if you hit P and go looking through your spellbook, before you pick your specialization or talent setup or anything like that, you're going to see all of your default talents, and these are now quote-unquote class abilities that are available to every paladin regardless of what your spec is. But if you go and actually start to pick a spec, there are certain abilities you're only going to get if you're in that spec. So specifically for paladins, for Holy, you're only going to have Holy Shock if you're Holy. Word of Glory, I think you do have in all your specs, but it is, obviously special for healers. Holy Radiance and Beacon of Light are going to be your other holy special abilities. As a tank, makes sense. Avenger's Shield, Shield of the Righteous. All specs still have Judgment and Crusader Strike. And then for Retribution, it's kind of showing you here your main abilities: Crusader Strike, Judgment, Templar's Verdict, Art of War, and Hammer of Wrath. Art of War being the Exorcism proc, and that's actually really cool. It's even better than it is on live because Exorcism doesn't have a cast time now, it just has a cooldown. And if you're Art of War procs, you can get another instant Exorcism, and it hits like a truck. So that's pretty awesome. So now, as far as the talents go, the talent trees are a little bit different. You don't have the set 30-point talent trees where you have to pick a bunch of points to get extra crit. Everything for your talents is supposed to be intended for utility and not necessarily like a required talent for DPS boosting. So I'm just going to go through really quickly and read some of the talents that are available for a Paladin. And this is across all specs. It doesn't matter if you're Prot, Holy, Ret, whatever. You can choose from any of these. Alright, so on your first tier here that you get at level 15, you have 3 abilities that all have to do with movement speed. You have Speed of Light, which is a 45-second cooldown, which increases your movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. So it's a 45-second sprint, or cooldown 45 seconds. Long Arm of the Law, you get a 45% movement speed increase on every judgment. If you've played Ret before, you kind of already have this in live, where if you judge something that's far away, you get that movement speed increase. So this allows you to have that regardless of your spec and regardless of how far away you judge something. So personally, I think that's one of the strongest ones here because it's up all the time. Pursuit of Justice just gives you a flat movement speed increase, 15% plus 5% for every charge of Holy Power that you have. And now in MoP, one of the new changes I'll talk about also, you can store up to 5 Holy Power instead of just 3. So if you say, okay, you have 15% plus 5% for each one, that's an extra 25. That's a flat 40% movement speed if you've got full Holy Power, and that's just all the time. You just run around like that. So that will be pretty strong. For your level 30 talents, these are kind of your crowd control talents. You have Fist of Justice, which is basically it's a replacement for Hammer of Justice, and it just reduces the cooldown on it to 30 seconds. Repentance, that's exactly like what it is in live, only you can now have that if you're not Ret. It's going to stun your target for a minute, unless you hit them, obviously. Burden of Guilt, when you judge a target, it reduces their movement speed by 50%. To me, that kind of seems like a PvP sort of talent. I wouldn't really be taking that for PvE, and that's our main focus. So. Alright, level 45, you're going to get your next set, and these are all 3 healing or mitigation talents. Selfless Healer. Basically what this does is every time that you do a judgment on your target, It gives you a stacking buff that is going to reduce the cast time and mana cost of your next Flash of Light by 35%, and it stacks up to 3 times. So after doing 3 judgments, you would basically have an instant and free Flash of Light. When you're using, and it increases the effectiveness of it if you're healing somebody else. So you would get an instant, free, 200% Flash of Light every 3 judgments. So I could see that being really strong, potentially for Holy Paladins, but it depends on kind of the mana cost of Judgment for Holy, because I think they just nerfed that. Okay, Eternal Flame, you use 3 Holy Power to put a Holy Flame on a friendly target. It heals them for 5,000 and an additional 465 for 30 seconds. So this is just like a hot for Holy Paladins, which is something they haven't had for a really long time. And I think that in theory would be pretty strong, except it replaces your Word of Glory. And personally, I play a Holy/Ret Paladin on live, and Word of Glory is extremely strong and important to have, so I wouldn't personally take that talent, because you have the other option here of Sacred Shield, which puts a shield on the target for 28 seconds, which absorbs up to 166 damage every 5 seconds. So Holy Shield is going to be really nice, or Sacred Shield is going to be really nice, because you could just have it up pretty much all the time as just an extra little bit of mitigation outside of, whatever you happen to be doing in your main healing rotation. Now, the important thing to note, though, is you can pick any of these abilities even if you're not a healer. So even though I was kind of addressing that from a healer perspective, as a DPSer, you might want to be able to put Holy Flame on yourself, since you're not going to be using Word of Glory or you might want to put the Eternal Flame on yourself because you're not going to be using Word of Glory on cooldown necessarily. But similarly, Sacred Shield could also be really strong too. You can help throw that on a tank, keep it on yourself, give yourself a little bit more survivability. Either way, most of the talents in this row are going to be pretty pro. Level 60 talents, you have Hand of Purity, Unbreakable Spirit, and Clemency. Hand of Purity is an external cooldown. It's similar to the other hands, Hand of Sacrifice, Hand of Freedom, all that, except its effect is it reduces the damage done by a periodic effect, some kind of dot, by 70% for 6 seconds. I think that's going to be very situational, and it's going to depend on the boss encounter. You might want to switch that in and out. I don't necessarily think that would be great having all the time. Maybe in PvP I think it could be really strong, but not so much for PvE, unless a specific boss has, a dot, heavy hitting dot on the tank or something like that. Unbreakable Spirit, basically this allows you to reduce the cooldown on your Bubble, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by spending Holy Power, which you're going to be doing, for pretty much everything. You can only reduce it up to 50%, which for Bubble and Lay on Hands, that may not be that great, but for Divine Protection, that would make Divine Protection, I think, a 30-second cooldown, because it's 1 minute by default, so you would have that up pretty much all the time, because it's already 10-second uptime, so you would only have 20 seconds of downtime in between having a Divine Protection up. So that could also be really strong for tanks. Clemency allows you to use all your hands, Hand of Freedom, Protection, Sacrifice, and Salve twice before it becomes on cooldown. So I think that can also be really strong, because you can, it's basically reducing the cooldown to 100%, because you rarely need to use those twice. Okay, level 75, you have Holy Avenger, Sanctified Wrath, and Divine Purpose. Holy Avenger is basically Zealotry, as it is on live right now. Allows you to use or generate 3 Holy Power, every single hit for 18 seconds. I think that is going to be a toss-up between Holy Avenger and Divine Purpose. Divine Purpose, that's for Ret. Divine Purpose gives you 25% chance to proc Divine Purpose on Holy Power generating abilities, or using abilities. Basically, that makes your next Holy Power using ability act as if you had used 3. That is going to be up to the theory crafters to figure out which one of those is better for your DPS rotation. Obviously, if you're doing like Spine of Death Wing, or you need big burst or whatever, then Holy Avenger is going to win, but it's very possible that your long-term DPS might actually be a little bit better with Divine Purpose, although it's going to be a little bit RNG based. All right, Sanctified Wrath. When you pop your wings, you're going to get special abilities depending on your spec. Holy is going to reduce the cooldown of your Holy Shock. Prot reduces the cooldown of your Judgment, which is pretty crappy, but you get an extra 20% healing. I'm glad they added that in there, so it's actually somewhat useful for tanks, because otherwise it was pretty crap. Ret reduces the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath by 50%. That's kind of okay, but really it's not that great because Hammer of Wrath doesn't hit that hard. It's an okay finisher, but Exorcism, from the testing I've done so far, Exorcism hits harder than Hammer of Wrath, and Hammer of Wrath comes in maybe about second place when you're in execute range, so if you were in execute range, I could see that being a slight DPS boost, but nothing too spectacular. All right, level 90. These are all your brand new talents that are just here for MoP. You have Holy Prism, Light's Hammer, and Execution Sentence. Holy Prism, this is something that they're kind of doing with, it seems like priests also, but it says sends a beam of light toward a target, turning them into a prism for holy energy. And it does damage and healing depending on whether or not you're shooting it at an enemy or if you're shooting it at a friendly target. And you can figure out which way it would work. Light's Hammer. This one's pretty cool. I think this will be really good for tanks and even potentially for Ret for some nice AoE DPS depending on the fight. But you throw a hammer into the ground, and it shoots this like cool arcing yellow light all over the place and does this AoE to everything. It's like this pulsing death and decay sort of deal. So if you have that plus Consecrate, pretty strong AoE abilities. Execution Sentence is going to be your pretty strong level 90 single target ability. Hammer slowly falls from the sky, causing 12,421 holy damage over 10 seconds, and it builds up and it has a big burst of DPS right at the end. You can also, though, throw this on a friendly target, like on a tank or something, and you can do that amount of damage actually as healing. So they're really seeming to have a lot of abilities here where you can either do DPS or do heals with the same ability, just depending on whether or not you choose to use it on an enemy or on a friendly target. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out and if that's actually required once we get into raids. So the cool thing though, you only have 6 talents and you can switch them out depending on the fight. Alright, as far as glyphs go, glyphs also are supposed to not really be DPS increasing things anymore. They're really supposed to be for utility or even fun. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll just point out a couple important things. If you notice here, the Glyph of Divine Protection, they swapped this from the way it works in Live. In Live, it's automatically like a 20% damage reduction across the board, and you can glyph it to be just magic. Divine Protection now, though, is just magic by default, and you have to glyph it if you want it to count as physical also. Again, you're going to want to switch that for the fight. Let's see here. Harsh Words. Now, this is really cool. This is what I was talking about, where you can use a healing / DPS ability. Harsh Words allows you to use Word of Glory as a DPS ability on an enemy instead of healing somebody. So that, depending on your gear, at my level 85 gear, it hits for about, 25k or something like that. So it's a pretty solid DPS adder, I guess. Let's see here. There's 2 kind of crappy glyphs here that I would say, you probably don't want to take them unless you're particularly bad at maintaining like Inquisition uptime or something like that if you're Ret. This Glyph of Inquisition reduces the damage bonus of Inquisition by 15%, which is kind of a lot, but it increases the duration by 100%. So if you get 3 Holy Power and then pop Inquisition, you're not going to have to refresh it again for a minute. So if you're really bad at getting Inquisition up or maintaining your Inquisition uptime, then it might be worth it. But for like the hardcore raiders, not going to be used. That's it of the major glyph changes. There's some other cool things like 4 wings, and you get kind of a slow fall if you get the Falling Avenger. You can Bubble Hearth if you get the Glyph of Righteous Retreat. Bubble Hearth is back, so that's pretty awesome. But that's about it. Now, in terms of some other changes, um, Hammer of the Righteous, which is generally a tanking ability, that's now available to Retribution as well. I don't think Holy Paladins can use it. Yeah, I think it's just Prot and Ret, but that's pretty awesome for Ret, specifically because Ret AoE was always pretty lame because they could, you could do like a Divine Storm or whatever, but then you sat around for like 6 seconds waiting for something to come off a cooldown before you could actually do anything. Now, though, you can hit your Hammer of the Righteous and, get an AoE going, and then as you're, waiting, this is kind of building up your Holy Power also. And then at the end, your Divine Storm is actually something that uses Holy Power instead of generating. So it's like kind of an AoE finisher. So you get your Hammer of the Righteous, get your 3 Holy Power up, and you can pop a Divine Storm and do a big hit on everything. So I think that is pretty awesome for Ret Paladins. You get an actual DPS boost. Alright, let's see what else we have. Oh, okay. Yeah. Other things, seals. Seals used to, you used to have them as actual spells. Now there's like a seal bar, and it's almost just like a stance, kind of like a hunter stance bar. And you see it right here. Seal of Truth, Seal of Righteous, Seal of Justice, and Seal of Insight. Those are all pretty similar to what you're probably used to. If you notice, Crusader Aura is gone. But the cool thing, at least, is we have it built in now, so you don't ever have to turn on Crusader Aura. You just have this as a passive ability. The only downside of that is going to be whether or not people are going to be able to follow you if you're on, if you're running or if you're on a mount or something like that, because it used to be something that you could use to benefit the entire raid, but that's kind of out the window. Emancipate. That's a really cool new ability. Removes 1 Moon pairing effect. I think this is going to be kind of OP in PvP because it has no cooldown whatsoever. It just costs 3,000 mana, so I think Ballets are going to be pretty much like the coolest flag carriers ever now, because we already have Hand of Freedom, and then we can just emancipate in between. So that'll be really good. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, other abilities that are not really changed, but in some way they're a little bit changed is Crusader Strike, Judgment, and Exorcism, and I believe Hammer of Wrath all generate Holy Power. Hammer of the Righteous also generates Holy Power, so almost every single ability that you're using is generating some sort of Holy Power, so you're not going to be sitting there, not, wasting GCDs because you can't do anything. You're going to be able to get your Holy Power built up much more quickly and get to those all-important finishers. So that's a great quality of life improvement for all Paladins, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Another thing that's kind of interesting is Devotion Aura. All the regular auras are gone. Devotion Aura, Ret Aura, all of that. And so they kind of replaced that with this raid cooldown, a 3-minute raid cooldown that's called Devotion Aura. But basically it's kind of like Aura Mastery, in that it makes you immune to silence and interrupt effects, and it reduces all the magic damage you take by 20%. So I think that is a pretty decent raid cooldown. It's not like super great, but at least it's available to like all Paladins, so that'll at least be nice that you'll be able to stack that with the other healing cooldowns, and that'll help out. Other things that have changed so far really just include number tweaks. Specifically, Judgment is actually pretty useful again. It doesn't hit like super hard, but it's very close to some of the other abilities. When I was playing with it, my Crusader Strike was hitting for about, I think, 12k if it's a non-crit, and my Judgment was hitting for about 10k, which is a pretty far cry from what you see on live. So that's pretty nice. Other than that, I think the other changes for Paladin, they're pretty obvious, pretty intuitive, mostly quality of life kind of stuff. And I'm looking forward to trying out the new abilities. I just hope that the tuning works in our favor, because Pallies are a little bit under-tuned on the PTR right now. But I think that's about it, guys. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll try to follow up on them again later. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will talk to you later.